Yeah. Okay. Hello again. I have to restart again because I'm also recording on my telephone. The final criticism, the last criticism of the king, is very annoying for Gulliver, because Gulliver thinks that his country is a great country, so his history is criticized by the king. The king thinks that their history is full of massacres, wars, rebellions, and everything. In chapter 7, nothing but an extreme love of truth could have hindered me from concealing this part of my story. Because he says that he loves his country and he loves the truth of his country. But what is that truth? The truth, by truth he means whatever his country is doing is the truth. But now he has changed his perspective. I repeat the perspectivity in this novel. When he changes the perspective, he sees a different truth about his country. Maybe the criticisms directed towards what Gulliver tells him by the king are Jonathan Swift's own criticism about his country. He makes Gulliver talk about his country in a positive way, and he directs criticism from outside. And Gulliver now realizes a different perspective, because he didn't have this perspective before about his country. He always thought that his country was a wonderful place, but when he faces a new, different perspective, he is shocked, annoyed and shocked, which is, of course, always difficult to accept different perspectives about your own place, about your own culture, about your own country all the time. It was in vain to discover my resentments, which were always turned into ridicule, and I was forced to rest with patience while my noble and most beloved country was so injuriously treated. I am heartily sorry, as any of my readers can possibly be, that such an occasion was given. But this prince happened to be so curious and inquisitive upon every particular that it could not consist either with gratitude or good manners to refuse giving him what satisfaction I was able. Yet thus much I may be allowed to say in my own vindication, that I artfully eluded many of his questions and gave to every point a more favourable turn by many degrees than the strictness of truth would allow. For I have always burned that laudable partiality to my own country. Now, partiality. He had to be on the side of his country. He had to defend his country. Partiality means you are not impartial, you are not, sometimes people say that I am independent and I'm an impartial person. No, Gulliver is not impartial, he is partial. He is taking side with his country. He is on the side of his own country. And I skipped the next paragraph to confirm what I have now said. And further, to show the miserable effects of a confined education, I shall here insert a passage which will hardly obtain belief. He says that I shall tell you a story which you cannot believe. Can you imagine? He is now going to tell the king about gunpowder. I hoped to ingratiate myself further into His Majesty's favour. He wants to be favoured by the king by telling him a very powerful weapon. Told him of an invention discovered between 300 and 400 years ago, to make a certain powder into a heap of which the smallest spark of fire falling would kindle the whole in a moment. And he tells the king what they can do with the gunpowder. They can destroy the cities, destroy the enemy's cities, destroy the enemy's people, enemy's nation, and kill thousands of people in one go. But in the next paragraph, next page, the king was struck with horror at the descriptions I had given of those terrible engines and the proposal I had made. He was amazed how so impotent and grovelling an insect as I, he still calls him an insect, how can an insect like you talk about such terrible things? Okay, could entertain such inhuman ideas in so familiar a manner as to appear wholly unmoved at all the scenes of blood and desolation. So the idea is, the thing here is that the king is a giant now, but although he is a giant and Gulliver is tiny now, that giant man is more humanist than Gulliver. So now, the size of the body size and the physical power do not always prove that you are a delicate person or you are a violent person. All right? A tiny man is not so delicate, is not so gentle. He is very aggressive and very violent. On the other hand, the king is so giant, so big, but he's not aggressive. He's very gentle, he's human. And he thinks that these are inhuman ideas. Using gunpowder to destroy your enemy, using gunpowder to destroy the cities of your enemy is inhuman, not a humanist way. And in so familiar a manner as to appear wholly unmoved at all the scenes of blood and desolation, which I had painted as the common effects of those destructive machines, whereof he said some evil genius, enemy to mankind, must have been the first contriver. As for himself, he protested that, although few things delighted him so much as the new discoveries in art or in nature, yet he would rather lose half his kingdom than be privy to such a secret, which he commanded me, as I valued my life, never to mention any more. You see, the king says that I prefer to lose half of my country instead of killing so many people. Now, it gives us an alternative vision, alternative vision. Disarmament. Get rid of your arms. You are destroying the world, destroying the humanity, the king says, and you are destroying the humanity. You are being very violent, but instead be gentle, stay away from arms, be human. He's so much interested in new discoveries, but he doesn't want to hear such discoveries at all, the king says. Gulliver thinks that this is a narrow-minded approach because he believes that the king has a very good educational background, but he is narrow-minded. A strange effect of narrow principles and short views, he says. Short views, narrow-minded. That the prince possessed of every quality which procures veneration, love and esteem, of strong parts, great wisdom, profound learning, endued with admirable talents for government, and almost adored by his subjects, should from a nice unnecessary scruple, whereof in Europe we can have no conception. All right. Neither do I say this with no exception. Let slip an opportunity put into his hands that would have made him absolute master of the lives, the liberties, and the fortunes of his people. Gulliver claims that he has given the king a big opportunity to be the master of everything, to be the strongest king in the world, and to govern all his people, the fortunes of all his people. But the king refuses those. This is very astonishing and surprising for Gulliver. And at the end of this paragraph on the next page, the king says that, and he gave for his opinion that whoever could make 2 ears of corn or 2 blades of grass to grow upon a spot of ground where only one grew before would deserve better of mankind and do more essential service to his country than the whole race of politicians put together. That's the wonderful part of the book. Okay, great part of the book. He says that whoever grows a handful of corn is doing more service to his country than the whole lot of politicians. You see, This is a universal book, timeless book. This is written in an artificial, fantastic land which is not real. And this is only fiction. All right, set in an unreal world, non-existent, imaginary world, in an 18th century novel, but it even points out at history. It even points our day. All right, it even describes our day. It says that, politicians do not do anything for the service of this country. Grow a handful of corn, you're doing more service to your country. So in order to serve your country, produce. In order to serve your country, work. The learning of these people is very defective, consisting only in morality, history, poetry, and mathematics, wherein they must be allowed to excel. Okay, the education of this country starts with morality. So moral education is more important than the other types of education. So they are first taught, children are first taught morality in this culture. And then second, history, and then poetry. Wonderful, isn't it? You have to be moral, you have to be knowledgeable about history, and you have to know poetry. And then maths, which they must be excellent. But the last of these is wholly applied to what may be useful in life. But this maths, in which they have to be excellent, must be useful and applicable in life. To the improvement of agriculture, all mechanical arts, so that among us it would be little esteemed. As to ideas, entities, abstractions, transcendentals, I could never derive the least conception into their heads. And the laws of this country are very few. The laws should not be more than the numbers of letters in an alphabet. They have 22 letters. So the laws shouldn't exceed the number of letters. Imagine we have 29 letters and we should have only 29 number of items in our laws, which indicates that, there's always a saying, when there are many laws, there is less democracy, less justice in the world. Fewer laws, more freedom. Okay. So this is the end of this chapter. Again, full of criticisms of the world history, full of criticisms of the political systems all around the world. Okay. So now this is the end of chapter 7, and we're going to begin chapter 8 tomorrow. So I hope to see you tomorrow again. I'm ending this session. Thank you for joining me. If you have any questions, please write to me either on the system or either by email or messenger. Okay, hope to see you again tomorrow. Good evening.